From shadows deep, a whisper starts to bloom, a tiny spark defying all the gloom. They said we were too small to eat, to rise, ignored the fire burning in our eyes. But every root we set, a promise made, a silent strength that never will evade.
Across the field, forever standing tall, banish every fear. We will rise, the phoenix will rise. Our triumph echoes, reaching for the sky. Unstoppable born, eternally we fly.
Brian is innocent. Brian has been essentially convicted in the media. He has a right to have this information withheld, brought out in public, so that people can see it's not this neat little package. So people can start to wonder if Brian's innocent. Your Honor, Brian is innocent. So if I talk about things that are in the affidavit, and if I talk about things that we're seeking that the state wants to hide, I think that's fair game for the public to hear.
All right. And fair game for the public to hear, and the public is hearing. So there has been over 20 new documents unsealed We're going to review this live. I'll start with the most interesting. So I am so glad you guys are here on an impromptu, quick live. I've gone through all these documents over the last maybe 2 hours, and notice just a few things that are of interest. So let me just start with it here because I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to do it. Let me throw it up on the screen. This was very interesting in the male DNA that may have been tested, may or may not. It looks like it. And it excluded, well, we know this for a fact. They've excluded 18 males. 18 males that were excluded from the DNA that was found at 1122. So I hope that everyone is having a great Friday night, whatever you're doing, laying in bed, hanging out late with the family, bored in scrolling social media, TikToks, whatever. Let me put this up on stage and then we all can take a peek at it. So this was a document that I noticed that, and some of these are stuff that we've talked about before. I don't know why they didn't stipulate or specify or highlight what was actually unredacted. So it's good to see everyone in here. Give me a thumbs up, please. Donna Rosa, Dennis, welcome in. D. Garrison, Caleb, hey. Brenda Frey, stay as late as you can. You don't have to. Nona Ryan, yeah, I'm so happy that you're going over this. Falls in line with our earlier live. Absolutely. Time is running out, and we have been waiting for these documents for months, since December 18th. December 18th. Can you imagine if a court was taxed with interest on how long they took to release these documents? It is getting right down to the wire. It is crazy. But can you imagine? I downloaded all these documents. But can you imagine if the court was taxed with interest on when they should have released these and charged for not giving these to the public as promised? Can you believe that? They would surely get these documents out a lot quicker. We all should have known MPD would drop right before the other court date. Yeah, you got a point. Point. Yeah, they got to make it public before Monday, right? So what better night to do it on a Friday night when everybody's out a couple hours ago. Love you like a sis. Oh, that's so sweet. Burning the midnight oil. Yep, sure indeed. So, they specify they test 18 males. We know that only a handful of these DNA is important. So it says right here at the scene marker, right under 3A, it excluded 18 males who had their reference samples collected and tested. Now, I was up to 30, but now if you're looking at just males, they say 18. A lot of people gave up their DNA freely. You heard Jack D's interview just the other night. Yeah, I'll give you it. A lot of people did cooperate. So it's talking about they might have matched to unknown male B or D and provided pertinent information to help with the investigation. The samples were collected but not typed. And it very clearly it says they might have matched to unknown male B or D. So who was male B or D? Remember, I told you, I think they know. They're just not sharing this. So when you go down and says there were only 2 unknown male DNA profiles reported that were recovered from inside the crime scene evidence that were not consistent with victim Ethan Chapin. So they benchmarked the 2 unknown males against Ethan, and obviously it wasn't Ethan. One was called Unknown Male A from item 1.1, the swab of the front strap on the K-bar knife sheath found close to a victim's body or perhaps on the floor per the book, and the notes that we are waiting on, the handwritten notes from the ISP detective. One which only the defendant cannot be excluded as the contributor. So that means that they had something of Kohberger's and he could not be excluded as the contributor. The other was called Unknown Male B from item 30, which was a small red stain on the underside of the stair handrail. We've talked about this. The handrail, the north wall between the first and second floors, ISPF crime scene marker identified B. And that excluded all 18 males who had their reference samples collected and tested. So this unknown male B, seriously, guys, listen to this. Small red stain underside the handrail, north wall between the first and second floors. And that was identified as marker B from the Idaho State Police Forensic Science Team, crime scene. They excluded all 18 males who had their reference samples collected and tested. This presumed blood stain location was near presumed blood stains 31.1, identifier D, found to be consistent with Ethan Chapin and presumed blood stains, item 72 on the north wall of stairway and 73 on the half wall. They were reported consistent with victims Kaylee and Maddie. Refer to the photos. So those are the ones on the stairs way over that they said that they were diluted. So these were presumed blood stains. So they never say, obviously, who it matched. What body fluid cell material did the DNA come from? No body fluid testing of 1.1. Remember, I said there were no prints. It is very tricky. The state does use specific words to suggest Brian's involvement. It's legal semantics for sure, Caleb. I agree. A positive presumptive test for blood was reported on item 30. The small red stain underside the handrail north wall between the first and second floors. So imagine leaving the house down the front door. Blood stain under the handrail on the north wall and between the first and second floors. So this individual, remember, JD's statement last night, I think I played it last night, he said that he was told the perpetrator went down to the basement. Do you guys remember that statement that he made? He made this statement. Let me see if I've got that video file again, because sometimes after I record them, I download the massive one and then I don't have them anymore. So let me just see if I've got that screen recording. Let me see if this is it. Part 3. We reviewed it. Hold on. Let me see if this is it. So he did state in his interview that he was told the guy saw Dylan. He got scared and ran downstairs. Remember that? Anybody drop a 1?
Do you know who friends are, other than just his freshman year? Buddy, heavy set guy was that's on the video. They're both. Yeah, what he was wearing.
Okay, so some of you do remember. Okay, cool. I don't think this is it, but he did specify that the guy saw Dylan and ran down the stairs. Now, this corroborates with the identification of the presumed bloodstains that turn up to be profile B. Profile B. They were reported with consistent, okay, so no body fluid testing of 1.1. That was the sheath front strap was reported. But presumptive test was reported from item 30, a small swab underside the handrail. Where did the DNA come from? When did the male get deposited? There are no reliable, widely adopted tests to determine when DNA from biological material was deposited. In this case, neither of the item 1.1, which they say is Kohberger's, swab of the K-bar knife sheath, front strap, male DNA profile, or the item 30, a small red stain underside the stair handrail, male DNA profile, exhibited severe degradation and often associated with old deposits of biological material. Holy moly. There are no reliable, widely adopted tests to determine when DNA from biological material was deposited. So, they can't prove, number one, when the DNA got on the sheath. They can't prove when that small red stain underside the stair handrail and all those other locations got there. So, what then? What do they do? Do they say, oh, made a mistake, can't prove it, we'll just go and give you a plea deal? 18 males excluded. Wow. 18 of them. I wonder who those 18 were. I know we see a file that has over 21. So 18, 19, 20, 21. So that would make 3 outstanding perps. One they say is Brian Kohberger. The other 2 still unknown. Other 2. I can guess. I can make an educated guess who those individuals are. From my humble opinion, I can only speculate by the information that we've been given and most of the interviews we've listened to. Although we haven't heard anything from Pete yet, I hope Connor gets that very quickly so we can listen to Pete's interview. And the state hid behind a protective order that they obtained to shield materials from their own investigation, then turned around and used the same order as a weapon when the defense asked for those materials. That's stupid logic and best at due process, problem at the worst. Othram's lab protocols were inadvertently excluded from the court's in-camera view. That's the state mistakes, not the defense's. The FBI analysts were completely redacted, so the defense can't even identify who to depose. Detective Gooch notes suddenly don't exist. She made one phone call, remembered nothing, and took no notes. This is a rebuttal. These are from the rebuttals. I'm going to show you these. And then a highlight note that I did write down is that the IGG investigation is literally how Kohberger was identified. If the defense can't examine the underlying methodology of the lab protocols, the database searches, the analyst qualifications, they can't meaningfully challenge the most critical piece of evidence in this entire case. That's a serious constitutional problem, regardless of what anyone thinks about his guilt. This affects me, you, every United States citizen. No matter if IGG was done by blind witch doctors who never studied biology, if they get the process wrong, then the resulting suspect wouldn't be a match DNA. That makes sense. However, why do they not rule out Kohberger, but they rule out the other male B? Who was male B? Who was that? Just reading these crime court documents about this crime in the IDAHO4, there's some big questions. I'm just going to go over a few highlights so that we can have a really quick live. I just didn't want to miss anything, so I'm going to share this with you. I'll put these up on screen. So I've got them all downloaded. This one was interesting, folks. This one there wasn't much to it. This was back in February of 25, but they agreed. They stipulated an agreement of the parties to not mention the 2014 cell phone incident during trial. That was Brian Kohberger's allegedly taking his sister's cell phone and trying to sell it. There was an interview I watched the other day of someone who knew him, and they said they didn't even know that that was not his own cell phone that they were going to sell to try to get some substance, I suppose. And the court stipulated that they would not be allowed to mention anything about the 2014 cell phone incident where Mr. Kohberger took his sister's phone. That's exactly what it says. And that was in February of 2025. That was right around the time when they got the information back from the FBI folks that he didn't have any DNA in his car, the apartment, crime scene, nothing, not his office, anything. So this is very interesting that they both stipulated that this would not be brought up to the jury. Very interesting. Let me see what the next document is because I'm just going through these as with you guys. This was a motion in limine, and this was, let me see when this was filed, on the 24th of February, 25. And this was inconclusive data in motion in limine 5, and basically says allowing such testimony about the item 13.1 fingernail scrapings. Allowing such testimony would violate Mr. Kohberger's federal and state constitutional rights due to fair process, fair trial, effective assistance of counsel, and confrontation of witnesses. Yeah, he was a juvenile. No, 2014, he was 20, wasn't he? When was he born? 94? I think 94, wasn't it? 1994 minus 2014. He was 20. Yeah. Okay, so it says these are all made in fairness, statement of facts. In the grand jury testimony, check this out. Jade Miller testified. In the grand jury testimony, Jade Miller testified as to the results of testing of item 13.1, that was Q, the swab of the left fingernail clipping of Maddie Mogan. The data consisted of a 3-person mixture. The statistic, the likelihood ratio, LR, was calculated assuming that MM was a contributed to her own fingernails, of course. Miller testified as follows. The DNA profile is at least 7 million, what is that? 77.9, my math is bad right now, times more likely, let's just say 1 million more times likely to be seen if it resulted from a mixture of DNA of Maddie and Kaylee and a unrelated, randomly selected individual than if it resulted from DNA from Maddie Mogan and 2 unrelated, randomly selected individuals. Grand jury transcript 366. This is the first time that we are ever seeing anything that came out of the grand jury. The very first time. Was he 18? No. 20. He was born in 1994, correct? So take 1994 and subtract 2014. That gives you 20. So he was 20. So they stipulated to not even mention that incident. The data sample was inconclusive as to Mr. Kohberger in the grand jury transcript 365 and 366. Miller testified that inclusive means the analyst was unable to say one way or another whether or not Brian Kohberger is included in the mixture. You have to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. How could they get somebody to go up there? And this is where people need to be educated on DNA, folks. This is where people need to be educated. Was he 16? Told you my math is really bad tonight. What year was he born? What year was he born, guys? Was it 96 or 94? I can't remember right now, but listen to this. Miller was going to testify, she's the analyst, that she is unable to say one way or another whether or not Brian Kohberger is included in the mixture. Jeez. This is insane. This is insane. Did they not explain to the grand jury what the likelihood of ratio is? Holy moly, because if they went up there and they were going to say this about any other else's DNA, or let's go over the fingerprints of Hunter, Emily, and Bethany, that the analyst couldn't exclude them because of the patterns. This is wild. So 1994 minus 2014, that'll give you his age. He was 20. But they basically said they're not going to share that. The argument, and this was the defense argument, the misleading language confuses and misleads. The fact finding is barred by the rules. This due process that the evidence is overly prejudicial. And I would agree. I would agree to put somebody on the stand that says we're unable to say one way or another, because that's not true. Inconclusive in DNA means something totally different than inconclusive to prints. Remember when I showed you those fingerprints that said some ridges are similar, number 10 is similar, yada, yada, yada. They can't go up there and say the likelihood ratio, because you have to explain to a grand jury the likelihood of ratio. This is where this gets very, I don't want to say taboo or very kludgy or very bad juju, right? People need to understand how important DNA is in crime scene analysis. Not enough people understand this. If you walked into the court tomorrow and they said your DNA was all over the crime scene, and you're like, how did it get there? I was never there. I'm innocent. I'm factually innocent. I wasn't at this crime scene. Well, how did your DNA get there? I don't know. How did your trace DNA get there? Well, I went to the store, I touched the shopping cart, I went to the restroom, I touched the doors, and then I went home. You're telling me that I was at someone's house when I was sitting in my front room with my family? Well, the victim went to the grocery store, went to the bathroom, touched the doors, went to his car, went home, someone broke into his house, and your DNA is all over the crime scene. Who else's DNA might be there? If you don't know the process, you're going to be sucked in by the process. And that is freaking scary, folks. What if somebody broke into Kohberger's apartment and stole his knife or his sheath? Was that his? Maybe. We don't know, because they PCR'd this thing to death and it doubled in size, and obviously they matched it, and they took a part of his DNA from the trash and they put it together, and bam, now it's his. Wow. But the other DNA that was inside the knife sheath, and the blood that was inside there, and the DNA that touched the inside of the knife, whose was it? Well, we can't give you that information. Whose knife really was it? I would like to know. I think it's going to get down to the nitty-gritty of who these unknown males are. I think we're starting to see patterns here. So then Anne is saying the erroneous admission of irrelevant and prejudicial evidence will offend due process when it renders a trial fundamentally unfair. And that's where they were. It was a stalemate. It was a chess move. Here, expanding beyond the language of the report would prejudice Mr. Kohberger in that it might allow the jury to infer that the inconclusive data would mean that he might be included. Well, yeah, you told the grand jury that already. These grand jury members need to be educated on DNA. That should be a requirement for any freaking buddy to serve on a jury. Boy, I'm going to lose it. The night Phoenix had a meltdown. I'm saying, I'm going to get spicy up in here. When I read these and I'm live and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, every freaking jury member, if DNA is going to be part of a case, they should understand. They should give some course prior to a jury being seated. That should be a requirement to be on a jury. Do you understand how DNA works? Yes, no, maybe I've heard of it. They should have some course, some video, some session about DNA before you're seated on a jury that includes DNA in a case. In my humble opinion. I missed the clanking keyboard, Phoenix. Well, I'm going through these. We're not doing a live. We're looking at these documents right now. So then Anne says basically the traditional statistics that courts and juries are used to seeing and hearing. This is a new era of analysis. Now, listen to what it says next, because it gives names and persons. The LR comparison hypothesis is not a statement of identity or probability or identity. It simply asks the questions, given the data, which hypothesis tested is more likely? Remember, I used more likely or less likely? Well, it was Maddie Mogen's DNA was present. So when the lab generated an LR laid out above, the hypothesis was it was Maddie Mogen, Kaylee, and one unknown related person versus Maddie Mogen and two unrelated persons. The comparison was done for all the individuals listed on Report 7 for Mr. Kohberger in Report 26. I've talked about this one before. The ISP lab any number greater than 100 is considered a conclusive result indicating inclusion. Any number less than 0.01 is considered conclusive result indicating exclusion. He was excluded. The lab report, this is where it gets good. The lab report reported a series of LRs for item 13.1. That was Q 13.1 for 0.399 for Jack Decor. 399 for Jack Decor. Interesting. $0.485 for Cole Barenberg. 0.20 for Xana. And 0.0233 for Bethany Funk. Holy freaking moly, folks. You heard it here first. Wowzers. Wow, wow, wow. This is freaking crazy. I'm going to take this off, screenshot this, guys. You're going to want to know this. You're going to want to see it. Let me make it a little larger so you can screenshot that bad boy. There it is. Hopefully you can see it. And didn't I tell you that the fingerprints could have not excluded Bethany Funk? I went over those fingerprints with you. I wonder if that's why she got her little golden ticket. You know, she's she wouldn't be prosecuted. She got a nest egg. Wow. Forget due process. That was all out the window. Wowzers. All right. So let's see what else it says. Of interest is when a LR is calculated for Ethan Chapin, the lab reported 3.33. Thus, Mr. Kohberger's inconclusive LR is similar to most of every other person from an LR was granted in focusing on his inconclusive LR would mislead the jury. Yes, of course. Righty-dighty, it did. And it implies that LR means Mr. Kohberger's might be present in sample. The court should exclude testimony such as the range and whatever they told the grand jury transcript in 367. And this is the Exhibit 1 lab reports 7 and 26. We can go through those too. This is wild. Wild. Did it mean Bethany was probably involved? She might have been present. Might have been present. And we're talking about Maddie Mogan and Kaylee only. We're not talking about Ethan, and we're not talking about Xana. That means, to me, when this says this amount right here, let me just highlight this real quick. What this says to me, let me put it up on the screen for you. Let me explain this in really simple terms. Right here. Give me 1 second. I got to grab a drink of water. All right. Thanks for holding on. What does this mean? Let me explain it and break it down. All right. That means the DNA evidence was actually leaning away from those being contributors of that sample. So imagine you found a tiny fingerprint on a cookie jar and you're trying to figure out who took the cookies. Okay? So that's what you're trying to do. Or I used to do this when I taught total quality management in the military for officers. Imagine there's 100 kids on the playground and you find a red crayon. You asked who dropped this crayon. For some kids, the clues look less likely to be the owner, right? It's impossible to find that one owner out of 100. It's just likely that you'll find the answer. So the witness, Mrs. Miller, discussed Brian Kohberger's LR result, but she didn't mention that several other people had similar values and may have been present. The defense appears to be saying that the jury should have given the full context of the LR results, not just one person's result. That is wild. And keep in mind, folks, these numbers do not strongly point to any of these people. They're all in the zone where the DNA result is weak, exclusatory, or inconclusive. Therefore, their DNA appeared. Their DNA appeared. And it's important to note that Bethany is much more exclusionary because she lived there, right? She was a resident there. Her DNA would be all over. But they are talking specifically about 13.1. And what was that again? That was 13.1, let me go back to it. And that is the argument of the 3-person mixture on the left fingernail clipping of Maddie Mogen. How would Jack DeCour's DNA get under Maddie's nails? Well, they saw each other at the corner club. Kohberger was at the corner club. Xana wasn't, and Bethany wasn't. So were they present during this issue? Is that an issue? Think about that. Hey, we appreciate it, Dago. We are looking at the new release, 20 new documents. So that is and we can always watch Birdie on replay. All these individuals sit in the same shoes as Mr. Kohberger. So was he present? I don't think that data, I don't think it's inconclusive how that would mix. They gave the DNA profiles at the grand jury that more likely to be seen if it resulted from a mixture. But why would they include him in a mixture? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to me because they don't give the other LR ratios. Wow, that's wild. I'll look at the report for 13.1, Maddie's left fingernail clipping. When Mr. Kohberger sought to overturn the grand jury indictment, he argued that Mrs. Miller's testimony was inadmissible and misleading. The state argued that the testimony was presented to the grand jury as exculpatory and an effort to elicit favorable evidence for Mr. Kohberger. The independent lab testing conducted by the defense related to 13.1 is indeed exculpatory. Whoa, he's excluded, and the state should be precluded from misleading the jury in any way. She called the state out. He was excluded. But they continued pressing on, and this was February of 2025. He was excluded. This is at the time when all of these reports were coming back. We know this. We didn't know. It's now unredacted. All these little dots here, these are all redacted. Showalter was excluded. Jose Cruz was excluded. Dylan was excluded. But Bethany is a potential contributor. Xana is a potential contributor. I wonder. I'll hold my thoughts. Ethan was a potential contributor. Cole Beringberg, I don't know why I say burger. Cole Beringberg was a potential contributor. And Jack DeCour is a potential contributor to the mixture with Maddie, Kaylee, and one other. So who was this? Who was it? It says these are all inconclusive. All of these were inconclusive, but the ratio results. Look at the results of Ethan is extremely higher than anybody else. Extremely higher. This has me thinking. Let me look at this. Hold on. I want to look at something really quick. Now that they've unredacted it, we know. Let me look at something. All right, they unredacted the names, so now we know Showalter was not a contributor. Jose Cruz was not a contributor. He was the guy from the Pullman 4 we talked about. Dylan was not a contributor. .33 is very interesting. That means Ethan is definitely in the mixture. But the likelihood ratio result is inconclusive whether Ethan Chapin is a potential contributor. But he's highly in. Wow, maybe they were trying to protect him. That's the only thing I can think of. I really do. I need whiskey in my coffee. Wow. The number is above 1. Remember the results. Remember the rule for the results. If it's above 1, that person is more likely to be the contributor. If it's below 1, they're actually inconclusive. Wow. Well, you got to look at the several people that were connected to the house: Jack, Cole, Ethan, Xana, Bethany. They can't confidently say that they were contributors, or they're not. You can't say one way or another. It says inconclusive. But remember, the rules of the testing was made very clear that if it's above a 1, they're most likely a contributor. And Ethan falls into the first group, not the second group, of 3.33, way over a 1. Wow. They all took. I didn't see Cole at the Whites. Was Cole at the Whites? Cole was at the Corner Club. Gosh. The lab felt confident enough to say Dylan, Jose, and Showalter were not contributors to Maddie Mogan's left fingernail. That's huge. All right, so let's see what else they unredacted. That is the living room wall. And the excluded Kohberger in all of these. We already knew this. Let's see what was unredacted. Those were all known to not be any DNA from Kohberger. All right, so this DNA two profile mixture that's the result. And those are the names they finally unredacted. And these were some of the other people that were unredacted now too. So Xana, Jack, Bethany, Dylan, John, Cole, Jose Cruz, Henry Clark, Kenneth Anderson, Donald McDonald, Mason Barstow, Jeremy Reagan, Coy Nguyen, Derek Abignea, Patrick Bootner, Courage Alabru, James Deskins, Connor Chestnut, C Item 6, Report 3, and Kohberger are excluded as contributors to this DNA mixture. Wow, so who was it? Let's see what it says. These were all excluded. They even excluded Ethan. That was from the mixture. Item 73. What was 73 once again? Let's go back up. 73 was submitted wall from submitted stain, the swab from the half wall. 74, 75, 78 all matched Xana. So Xana DNA 74, 75. That was the swab from the second floor table. Finally, we have some truth here. The swab from outside the bedroom. So Xana was outside the room. And the swab from the living room table was 78. 78 was the swab on the stain from the near west bedroom. So her DNA was outside of the room. So I don't know how people can say that she never left the room. How is that? It's her DNA. Kaylee's on 76 and 77. 76 and 77 was the swab from the living room table. And the swab from the third floor door. We knew that. Okay, so that's there. All right. And 108 was returned to the agency. And what was 108? A mixture? 108 was a reference to Brian Kohberger. None found. So that's new. We just found out some more information. Let's see what the next one was. This was another release document that they could not mention the court that was sealed under order. So they just showed us what it is. They can't mention anything at the trial on the cell phone. This was a rebuttal, a supplemental response to some of the experts. David Howell, disclosure from Gary Shuttner, PhD. I wonder if these are unredacted. David Howell may testify for the defense as an expert regarding Amazon discovery. Mr. Howell's opinion and testimony will be based on his experience, education, and trainings as detailed in his resume, which is included in this response. It serves as a supplement in the information and report attached to the exhibit, the summary of Mr. Howell's anticipated testimony, but does not repeat all specific findings that are detailed in his report. And it's anticipated that Mr. Howell may testify in the areas of Amazon records, including how purchases are tracked, account activity, user activity, and the scope of Amazon records. This disclosure is provided as an aid. At the present time, Mr. Howell's full scope of testimony is unknown. The state has not yet disclosed the opinions of their experts. So he specializes on online brand protection, anti-counterfeiting, marketplace channel management, digital forensics. And this is his experience. AI talks about accurate forensic data. This is interesting how they operate on smartphones, cross-platforms, tablets, desktops, laptops, smart home devices, Alexa, Echo, etc. Without a full forensic data set, conclusions drawn from the available information lacking reliability are inherently incomplete. Here's his experience. Oh, he worked for Channel IQ. Global management. He was in the Army. Interesting. Boise State University. Bachelor of Arts, Political Science. He was a medic, a combat medic. Investigations and supporting military justice. Wow. And the PhD can testify regarding DNA testing and lab practices. DNA analysis, CODIS database. There is his experience from Canada. Remember, all these documents can be found on the COI in the repository, and I'll give you guys that link if you don't have it. And this tells you about his microbiology and immunity, DNA experience, qualifications, testing, and certifications, and where he's cited. His long list of references in papers and referred journals, international genetics, DNA forensics. Wow. This guy's got a whopping CV. All right. So let's go to the next document. I'm just reviewing these as I look at them with you. Notice of filing signed and notarized affidavit to the defendant's motion to strike the death penalty. They received it. And this is about a 4 or 5 page document. This is the expert of Cecil R. Reynolds. It is unredacted. He'll talk about mental health and neuroscience by the defense in Mr. Kohberger's case. His field of expertise is psychology, neuropsychology, and forensic psychiatry. During my work with the defense team, on my recommendation and after extensive vetting, they selected and hired Dr. Jolette James, neuropsychologist. She performed many hours of work, including testing Mr. Kohberger and conducting collateral interviews. Over the course of many months, she collected data and prepared to write a report. She had one additional round of tests planned to clarify diagnostic issues present with Mr. Kohberger prior to her writing her report. Shortly before that trip, Dr. James unexpectedly passed away. What? I was able to interview her regarding her incomplete impressions and gain incomplete testing data and developed an understanding of the additional work required, which included the addition of a forensic psychiatrist to the team. She was unable at that time to forward her records, testing, and notes to me due to the severity of her illness and its unexpected and rapid onset. What? Holy moly! She passed away. Wow. That's wild. Holy moly. After her death, I assisted the team in interviewing and selecting an expert to assess Mr. Kohberger. It was necessary to review and vet multiple experts to ensure the proper expert would be retained. The team subsequently selected Dr. Rachel Orr as a replacement for Dr. James and added Dr. Eileen Ryan, forensic psychiatrist, whose expertise would also be then was also required. I made several attempts to obtain raw data from performed by Dr. James. I was not successful. As a result, the neuropsychologist hired by the team had to conduct testing and interviews as if none had been previously done. That means they had to start over. Holy moly. Like they had no testing prior. This substantially delayed the development of full understanding of his neuropsychological status at the determination of evidence-based, defensible diagnosis of his multiple mental conditions. They say right here, multiple. Dr. Orr and Dr. Ryan have work diligently to learn about Mr. Kohberger, review materials related to the case, conduct interviewing and testing, analyze the data, and write an expert report. And the defense team has made every effort to assist them in completing their work in the most timely fashion possible without compromising the integrity of their work. Dr. Jolette James. She was a neurologist in Washington, D.C. Ivy Mount remembers her. Let me take a peek at this. Dr. Jolette James, October 21, 2024. They're mourning the passing, a clinical neuropsychologist. She was a dear friend and an Ivy Mount and member of our corporate and outreach boards since 2011. She was such a talented and treasured member of our community. We will miss Joette's active engagement and laughter at our board meetings and feel the loss to our community in her advocacy and service to those we serve. She specializes in the diagnosis and assessment of children and adolescents with autism spectrum disorders, as well as evaluating the individuals with learning disorders, executive functioning problems, and neurological disorders such as brain tumors, traumatic brain injury, and epilepsy. She was on the National Medical Center's faculty as an assistant professor in the departments of psychiatry and behavioral sciences and pediatrics at George Washington University, and was on the medical staff at HSC Pediatric Center. She spent countless hours of evaluating children and young adults, including many Ivy Mount school students. She also consulted on complex legal issues involving adolescents and adults with disabilities who are involved in the justice system. Right there. Wow. That is wild. So she passed away right in the middle of this testing for Kohberger. Wow. All right, let's keep going. Dr. Orr and Dr. Ryan have worked diligently to learn about him. They've made every effort to assist them in completing their work in the most timely fashion without compromising the integrity of their work. Neither Dr. Ryan nor Dr. Orr were able to present their findings to the team and develop initial reports until late January of 2025. Well, that was right before all the testing came back for the DNA was finally shared in 25 and filed. It didn't say how she passed away, though. Given the amount of work that had to be done, in-person exams, reviews of extensive records, conducting many needed collateral interviews, and I was frankly surprised either expert was able to respond as quickly as they did. The delay in diagnosis did not occur due to lack of diligence. It was obviously to the untimely and exceedingly unfortunate death of Dr. James. And that was entered on the record on 25th of February. Wow. That was almost the same time frame that the DNA came back, that nothing was in his car, nothing was in his apartment, nothing was found at the victim's crime scene. I don't know how she passed away. Let me see if anybody else can say. She was on the DC Arts Center. She was a champion of justice. Our public defender community suffered a great loss. A champion of justice. As stated, she was a true hero in our community and most importantly, our clients. Rest well, Dr. Joette James. You will be missed but never forgotten. Lori Jamestown, Executive Director. That's all it said. Read her memoriam here, and that's what I read to you guys. Let's see. Doesn't say much. I wonder how she passed. Let me do a little dig. Hold on. October. It just says her death was untimely. The specific cause of death was not publicly disclosed in any available sources. We honor her memory. Just says it was, wow. I don't see anything how. Yeah, she was young. It's not that old. No. I don't know. If you guys find an article or something, let me know. That's just so weird. She was born in 73, I think. Yeah. That's what it said. Wow, that's just that's unheard of. So obviously his team, one of them had passed away. The seventh motion to compel was in rest in peace, Dr. James. That's sad. She was only 53 and it was untimely. I wonder what happened. Seventh motion to compel Exhibit A, Detective Gilbertson CV. And this was a seventh motion to compel. What were they looking for in a seven motion? This was another motion to compel. Exhibit A. This was on the defense side. Exhibit A to defendant's seventh motion to compel. What were they not giving them? Or Othram Lab Protocol Policy and Procedures. Wow. The objection states that it's untimely and improper. They wanted all Othram Lab materials created to figure out how they got these protocols, how they got this DNA. And the state just objected. The state objected. All records produced to the FBI, but not limited to documents from Othram, Moscow Police Department, Idaho State Police, and Latah County Prosecutor's Office. They were just asking for the documents, and they looked like they were refusing to give anything forthcoming. This information will be forthcoming in discovery. Well, you need that to go to trial. You shouldn't have to compel someone to give this information before trial. All records of where they got the databases, GED Match, GED Match Pro, Family Tree, MyHeritage, and Ancestry. They wanted those. And the state was still objecting. And they wanted the ancestry tree building as testified by Leah Larkin on 1/23/25, right before the testing came back. Wow, I'm going to put a timeline together for this. This is just wild. Dr. Leah Larkin testimony on the 23rd of 2025. The GED com file is at best misleading. The state sought a protective order for the IGG information in this case. The district court ordered in-camera review of IGG information to determine what, if anything, should be disclosed to the defense. The state provided the court order with a letter from the FBI dated November 28, 2023. The letter from the FBI explained a digital version of the family tree exists in the platform, in the form of the GED.com file, and it's available for in-camera review. It requires downloading, and that's the expensive software that we've talked about in the past. Like it's $20,000 just to download the proprietary software. They were asking for access, an easier way to view these, and that makes sense. The defense then waited 12 months after it learned that you can only file 75 days after its discovery motion deadline. They should have still had access to this. The FBI states that there is also, the request is factually inaccurate in that no FBI analyst creating the SNP in this case. As the state explained, the defense in a letter October 23 when it disclosed two versions of the SNP profile. Let's see what it says. For context, November 22, 2022, a portion of the DNA extract was personally delivered to Othram Laboratories, a private lab from ISPFC. Using a portion of the DNA extract, Othram performed a DNA test called forensic grade genome sequencing. This created an SMP profile. This SMP profile was uploaded to Othram to begin genealogy research. On December 10th, remember, That's the same date that all these bigwigs sat around at the table and they had some type of protocol gathering. On December 10th, Othram was instructed to cease all work on the case. You can't make this up. On December 10th is when all the bigwigs, I've got the documents, I've got the emails, they all got together. They sat down and had a meeting on how they were going to proceed. And then Othram on that day was instructed to cease all the work on the case. They sent it out to another private lab. Wow. This is wild. I'm going to do a timeline on these dates. The FBI explained to the court in its letter dated November 28, 23, that personally identifiable information pertaining to the identities of those receiving correspondence have been redacted from any items. Shh. And the state objects to other things like results from the FIGG searches. Wow. And then all non-attorney work product emails regarding IgG, SNP, SNP, or Othram genetic genealogy were ordered to be disclosed after the court's in-camera review had previously been provided to the defendant. Lot of song and dance, guys. Lot of song and dance. Let's see. State's response to motion in limiting number 5, inconclusive data about the 13.1. We just went over those. Let me see what it is. The defense disclosed at cybergenetics as an expert in this case. She was going to testify that Kohberger was excluded. Yep. Excluded. That's what I figured. All right. So that was the rebuttal expert if went to trial. State's motion number 14, motion in limine. What is this about? Statistical analysis. Defendant asked the court to exclude a specific question for the grand jury and other questions and testimonies. The state will not ask the same question asked the grand jury because, as witnesses explained in the response to the question, it was not helpful ways to discuss likelihood ratio. So they wanted to strike that. And for the reason the court should deny the defendant's motion, that's what the prosecution asked for. They unsealed that. They didn't want number 14 out. Exhibits 1, 2, and 3. When was this filed? This was filed 17th of March. Okay, so these are in order. I just want to make sure I got them in order. They want a motion, limiting motion to admissibility of demonstrative exhibits. Email chain between Ashley Jennings, Bill Thompson, and Ann Taylor. Exhibit 3, email chain between Bill Thompson and Ann Taylor regarding new discovery disclosures. And they were going by Idaho rules. We've seen this before. This is the same exact thing except for full system file extraction for Bethany Funk's cell phone. That's unredacted. They wanted that. Dylan's cell phone. A native phone extraction. The defense has only been previously provided an Axiom report generated by law enforcement. We are seeking the data used to produce this report. Advanced logical extraction was only previously provided to the defense. They wanted full data on these phones, guys. They wanted all the data. They wanted all the data on these phones from Funk and Mortensen. And then they wanted a full extraction from Eric Gower's cell phone. This was by the defense. And advanced logical extraction. Wow. And they wanted also full extraction for Kaylee's phone. They wanted Kaylee's phone. After it had been unlocked, the defense has been provided the extraction with her user data encrypted due to the phone being locked. There is additional information stored in an unencrypted area on the phone that has not been provided. So they were obviously consulting with experts in the digital forensics area, and they wanted all the encrypted data, and they still weren't giving it to them. They wanted more information. Eric, Kaylee, Dylan, and Bethany. Wow. Folks, it was sealed at the time. And this was dated January 9th, 2024. That was the 11th supplemental request. All these, look at this. They kept asking and asking and asking. They said that they gave them all to him. And this is key. They were asking for all the audio available at 1112 King. Don't you think that Ann Taylor at this time would have had all this? Holy moly. I agree. Trial by ambush. I so agree. Look at that. Look at this. They needed all the audio. Audio has only been provided from 2:25 a.m. to 12:05. We are seeking all audio and video that exist from this camera. We are missing sound on 11/13/2022. That is the same missing sound that was given to Jules. Y'all, everyone needs to let her know that. They gave Anne missing audio. They're missing the same sound. Obviously, that's the time that all this occurred. Hello. They gave Jules the same audio, missing audio time that they gave Ann Taylor. Wow. Based on information we've reviewed in Discovery, we believe there is video footage prior to 0055 hours. We are requesting all footage, audio, and video that exists from the King Road camera prior to 0055 hours. Wow. This is crazy. Detective Maury is currently in the process of manually extracting all audio and video. How could they have got it, but they won't give it in Discovery? Wow, this is wild. This is what the defense was asking for way back when. The state has been advised this is a lengthy process. Don't you think 3 years later they'd have all this? The state will provide this information to the defense when it is available. Well, this was the state's response. By the way of explanation, there are 2 data sets for the videos. The original extraction from the SD card image, and 2, the video downloaded from the camera after seizure of the device. The forensic software used to extract the video from the SD card resulted in no audio. This is where the 0200 hours is located. Well, who deleted it? We are working to find software that can parse this data with audio. What? Then they asked for the screenshots related to the file. The video was extracted from the original SD card image using DVR Examiner forensic software. They want the audio. And they're saying no audio was extracted until software is located that can parse the video and the audio. We cannot produce the audio. They want a complete SD card from the 1112 King Road security camera. They said it was provided already. And they wanted surveillance camera footage from Latah County courtroom from 10/26 hearing. All the surveillance camera. I guess they wanted to see who was in the courtroom. And then follow up on investigation related to Shannon Gray media sources. Ah, dun, dun, dun. To determine if that was the leak, they wanted follow-up investigation related to Shannon Gray media sources. Alleged. That is definitely the G's attorneys. And the state said it requested supplement 199 and will discover upon receipt. They wanted all the Cast Viz users within the Moscow Police Department and certifications. Of course, I showed you earlier, even Ann Taylor asked for all the training records. Mowry and Fox are current certified Cast Viz users. Their certificates have been handed over to the defense, basically. They want to know what exhibits were created when using this program by Mowry. You know, the one that was hailed to be by the Secret Service to be of great use in this case. And obviously, any of the investigations of the homicides at 1122 King Road and any investigations of Brian Kohberger and or his prosecution. This requires everybody in the law enforcement, including FBI cast members, digital copies, yada, 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 AT&T request. And they wanted Exhibit 47 provided to the grand jury documents from the court July 3rd, 2023. And they wanted discovery on those Bates items. I'd have to go back and look at these Bates items and determine what they were. Let me just screenshot that. I'll look that up. Complete materials relied upon by Corporal Payne. Wow. She was asking for everything, every little piece of work they did in this case. Every little tiny piece of work. Unredacted, unredacted. All 3D scans of the house. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The defense was asking for all 3D scans and photographs completed by the FBI and ISP during their visit to 1122 King Road on October 31st to November 1st. What? Wait a minute here. Wait a minute. The FBI and the ISP during their visit to 1122 King Road on October 31st and November 1st, 2023. So they went out and did scans a year later, and Ann still didn't have that information? Wow. The state believes contains the 3D scans were handed over. Shh. They went out. Read that again. Okay. October 31st to November 1st, 2023, the FBI and the ISP went out to 1122 King Road. They did scans, 3D scans, and include all the scans and photographs and the residents of the surrounding area. That's what the defense was asking for. This was asked for, hold on a minute. This was filed and asked for all of this. 2024. So they already had a year to give this to her, and they didn't give her anything. So you can tell the state was stalling. Why were they stalling? Why were they unable to give all this data over? That doesn't make sense. What was the stall? And they talk about balance, and they talk about Kennedy, all the drive testing conducted. They wanted all of that, copies of the FBI reports, the Gladiator Anonymous receiver calibration. They were asking for missing communications. They were asking for a lot of discovery. They even asked for the native extraction for Dylan's cell phone again on page 225. And obviously, I talked about that already. Bethany's Funk's phone, they asked for again. Kaylee and Eric, we've already talked about that. And here's the emails that took place. I'm surprised to see this email. I did not see this 3D model drawing in Discovery, nor did I see it in expert disclosures. I cannot stipulate, especially without full discovery and expert opinion. This was in February of 25. Were they getting ready to stipulate something in February and didn't come to terms until June? Were they working a plea deal for all those months when the FBI reports came out? I wonder if they were talking about some type of deal way before then. Exactly, Brenda. Who were they protecting? I don't know. No, I don't know. Wow. This is wild. All right, so that was that document. Let's see what else is in this file of documents. We're reviewing them live all together. Under seal, Exhibits 1, 2, 3 in support of objection to the motion in limine, the advanced timing records. We've seen this. This is actually the verbiage in the email from Maori. Yada, yada, yada. Probably just a bunch of, yeah. We've seen the search warrant, pen and paper. We've seen that. I've unredacted this. I'll go through this. That's probably something I need to go through with fine-tooth comb and see what was taken out. There was the form for it by AT&T. There was the search warrant. (23rd of 2022). Okay, so that was pretty standard. Let's see what this one is. Defendant's objection to state motion in limine, self-authentication of records. Oh, self-authenticating. Linda Lane surveillance, hard drive provided. This is the defendant's objection. Linda Lane footage. 2 cameras are between 8 and 9 gigabytes of data. There are numerous clips of varying length with approximately a total of 12 and a half hours. So they had to go through all that. Albertsons, Clarkston, financial records, AT&T records, bagel shop video for November 13th. The video is over 7.5 gig in size. No information has been submitted explaining how this video is certified or what portions the state intends to use. What was at the bagel shop? I'll note that one. Bank of America records for Bethany and Xana. There's additional records that appears to be another person. Oops. These are different records. Bank records for Ethan Chapin. The state has not provided any specifics related to what it intends to rely on as used as evidence. Banner bank records for Ethan Chapin and his mother. Cafe Artista surveillance records, Corner Club surveillance. The surveillance is from 14 different cameras with multiple hours of video footage. Corner Club transaction receipts. It must have been for Kaylee, Villa, and a couple of other people. Costco surveillance. Up to 10 cameras and runs for approximately an hour. DeSales student records. The disclosure is thousands of pages of documents and are not organized in any fashion. They want to know what they're going to use. Dick's Sporting Goods record of sale for Brian Kohberger. What did he buy? In June, it's not specified what evidence or business activity. Financial records for Kaylee. 33 pages of records. The state has supplied 17 pages, including compliance forms and emails. The record is incomplete. DoorDash records for Xana and Ethan. It contains DoorDash records, but does not contain records for Xana. There was no record. Wow. This is wild. The warrant contains photographs, lists of deliveries for 1122 in a span as far as back at 2019 and a spreadsheet of person ordering the food and the DoorDasher. The state has not specified these records that they intend to use at trial. Earning warning, there's nothing. Elon financial records for KG. Why did they need all her records? An account for KG's relatives. ENS services. I wonder what that is. ENS services? What's ENS? ENS services. Pullman, Washington. What is ENS? Full Commercial Residential Property Maintenance Company. Janitorial, property, cleanings, plumbing, electrical, cabinet, irrigation. Owners, Shannon L. Glinsky and Eric Lugo. Why did they have that? That's public record, folks. I just looked it up. Nobody doxed anybody. If it's public knowledge, you can't dox. She didn't place the order. ENS services. Surveillance video for November 13th, 2022. Was that the cleanup crew? The disclosure contains 2 dates of surveillance with 125 entries. What is that all about? 1300 Johnson Avenue, Pullman. Well, I just looked it up, folks. It's right here. All public knowledge. ENS Services, Pullman. Residential, full service commercial, and property maintenance company. And those are the owners. It's all public. There's where they're located. And you can go and look at the Chamber of Commerce, construction, maintenance, and repair. This is listed with the Chamber of Commerce. All public info, guys. All public. There you go. All right. So let's go back and look at this. So why would they need a surveillance video for November 13th, 2022? I wonder what time that was the cleanup crew. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Bagels, said your mom. Bagels for what? Farmers Insurance surveillance video. I guess maybe somebody drove by there. I don't know. Floyd's Cannabis. We know that's been talked about before. Floridax Crypto for Brian Kohberger. Now, okay, here's a really good question. Why would they need Brian Kohberger's crypto? Why would they need to know about Brian Kohberger's crypto? How did they even know that he had a possible account with crypto? That's interesting. And they disclosed an expert, Michael Douglas. and no opinion of these records has been disclosed. Grub truck video we know about. Harbor Freight business surveillance records. ICC credit union for Maddie Mogan. Indian Mountain Lake surveillance and records. Joanne Fabrics. Don't know what that's about. Somebody buy fabrics. We know about that. That's his stop. The citation for a seatbelt. We know about that one. Marshall's financial records for Kohbergers. Purchases. National weather records. New America Bank for KG. PayPal, Venmo. Financial records. It doesn't say. Oh, Kohberger. Venmo for Kohberger. Synchronicity records. PayPal. PNC bank records for Kohberger. Pentel data. We know what that's for. Account information for MK and MAK. Who is that? Kohberger? Marianne Kohberger. Credit union for Mr. Kohberger, Pennsylvania. Michael Kohberger and Mary Ann Kohberger. Petco financial records for KG. Why did they need Petco? Why did they need records for Petco? That is so weird. Rite Aid financial for Bethany Funk. What? Contains an email stating they don't have any video footage or transactions for Bethany Funk from Rite Aid? Ross financial records. Has no information. Sunset Mart. Video. We know what that was about. Another Sunset Mart in Pullman. So Moscow and Pullman. Target financial records. TikTok for Xana. Financial records for DM. This disclosure contains a letter for Agent Douglas stating they are providing records from DM and BF from Target. Is that the bed sheets that they were looking at, or the blankets, or I'm just speculating from the documents that I've read. This is wild. Maybe they had joint accounts. This is pretty deep. What were they investigating? BK pleading is only good two things happen. Yeah. Yeah, I remember Petco. What was that all about? I don't remember. If somebody is asked a question by my mods and they don't answer, I'm going to put you in timeout. We're not playing with clowns or trolls tonight. T-Mobile records for KJ and DM. They want those records. Bank records for DM. Yeah, how deep is this? Disclosure contains banking records for DM. It also produces records for MM. Additionally, this disclosure contains a copy of the grand jury subpoena and letter instruction. Whew. Under Armour, transactions for BK. U.S. Chef Store surveillance for the 13th. Wonder who bought a knife. Alleged, obviously. Ulta financial records for KM. Why would they want Ulta financial records for Kaylee and Maddie? Verizon phone records for Ethan, Bethany, and JD. What the hell was going on in this case? Disclosure records for EC and BF. There are no records for JD. Walmart surveillance, purchases, Kohberger from Walmart, motor vehicles, we've seen that. Surveillance footage, we've seen that. That was released. Washington Trust Bank. Boy, Kohberger had a lot of accounts. What the hell? Almost as many as KG. Disclosure records from BK. There's an Excel spreadsheet in his car in the ATM that morning. The state can't provide any specifics on how it intends to use that. Wells Fargo for MM. They had a lot of accounts, guys. Not just one of them. Wells Fargo records for Maddie Mogan. Another bank for DM and Wells Fargo for MM. Records in the grand jury packet and letter. Those are not the same record as the record contained in another. Wells Fargo for MM. Same records. It looks like they just handed over a bunch of stuff to Anne, and there was no rhyme or reason. It was, wow, just a bunch of stuff. Winco financial records. What? And Winco financial and video surveillance for Bethany, Dylan, Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana. All the transactions for Winco food receipts. Surveillance, WSU parking. They're asking for all these information. And Mr. Kohberger provides an exhibit, a copy of the federal grand jury subpoena he was provided inadvertently. He sought all the grand jury subpoenas through discovery of motion and compel. His objection and the rights under the Constitution of the United States of America. Wow. They had lots of records. Let's see what this document was. Defendant's objection to motion in limine, the 911 call. I think this is pretty standard. The police, the 911 did not come in at 4:30 in the morning when DM and BF communicated to each other and ended up in the same bedroom. The call came 8 hours later. The call came after DM and BF made calls and texting family and friends. It came only after friends arrived. Well, we know that. BF initiated the call. Thereafter, the phone was passed around from person to person. The statements of Emily Allant when the phone was passed to her, oh, they saw somebody in their house. So it was Emily that said that. The state claims that these words are excited utterance because they explain Xana was passed out. Yeah. Wild. State fails to take into account why that statement was made. EA stated one of the 4 roommates was passed out and she was drunk last night and she's not waking up. Either BF or DM said, no, we saw. After that, prompted EA told dispatch clearly about the man they saw. Wait, did you guys catch that? Whoa. Either BF or DM said, no, we saw. After that, prompted Emily Allant told dispatch about the man they saw. They saw them. So we saw a man. The man. So Bethany and Dylan both saw a man. Wow. Therefore, the phone was handed back to DM. The statements by Emily Allant do not fit within excited utterance exception. She first states she is reporting a roommate who was passed out from drinking and not waking up. Then states they saw some man in their house. EA does not have firsthand information and is repeating what DM and BF told her. But on the call, it says a man they saw. No, we saw. Let's get your story right, guys. Text messages, yada, yada, yada. Oh, wow. And this is all still redacted. The grand jury, it's still redacted. He raised some objections, and that was it on that. I'm just going to go over a few other ones that I noticed. Objections. This is still redacted. They weren't going to use the traffic stop, I believe. This was their motion to dismiss that. Let's see. This was sealed, and this was unsealed, and these are the answers from Detective Gilbertson. Didn't we go over that? I'm going to have to go through this one with the fine-tooth comb because it looks like they added some things, took some things out. That was Gilbertson. What is this one? Jury questionnaire. I'll go over this one. They should seriously ask if they know about DNA. Wow, they can ask you if you're taking medication, for what reason, and how it interferes. Have you ever served in the service? What's your occupation? Have you or your spouse or immediate family member or close friend been employed by the University of Idaho, FBI? Gosh. Presumption of innocence. This was the jury questionnaire. These are pretty standard. Some of these are standard, but tailored to this case. Are you or involved? Anyone with the entities? Do you know any of these people? How'd you hear about this case? Did you watch this on true crime program television, YouTube channels, or podcast? Did you donate any funds? Have you already formed an opinion regarding the guilt or innocence of Brian Kohberger? Yes, he's factually innocent. Petco. All right. So that was the standard jury questionnaire. I'll go through that. Another forensic report that was released. Let me see what was unredacted. Took pictures, markers. I think this is all pretty standard. This was all pretty standard. This was the crime scene. This was the firearms and weapons. You know, I asked for that request from the ISP. I hope they give that to me. I really do. There's a Walmart involved somehow. I'll go through that one. Let's see what this one is. Ziploc bag with the trace of blue powder. We already know what it was. Amphetamines. They gave the testing markers. You know, and I don't know if this is true. I just read this in a medical journal the other day, that if you take amphetamines, and you test later on, it can test as amphetamines. So I don't know how true that is, but I thought that was interesting. The K-bar knife sheath, item 1, there are no prints on it. No prints were developed. I told you guys, no prints were developed. Here's the document that they released today. No prints were developed. We saw the email and the text message from the FBI agent, and it says nothing. Here's all the people they probably excluded from the DNA right here. All 18 people. Tyler Yelk, Sangria Riley, Jonathan Excedrin, Reed Upmore, Don McDonald, all those people that were excluded. Oh, and something that I found interesting hidden in the documents, I'll go over that on Monday. I'll share that, what I found on Keystone light cans. Yeah. 33 latent prints were marked and preserved. 33 prints. Wow. They got all those people to give up their DNA and prints. Jeez. That's wild. All right, let's see what this one is about. K-bar knife sheath, we know that. Let's see if anything was unredacted. Probably not. Nope. That's all the same. That was the nail clippings that we went over. Let's see what this one is. FBI responded to the Albertsons location, collected the video surveillance. The video surveillance system was put onto a drive. Let's see what it says. He went to go extensive canvass of Moscow. This is the FBI official record. Following the summary, I got Indian Hills, Moscow record, camera, Main Street, 11225 Road Ridge Road, apartment 108. Camera, 1320 Linda Lane, 1112 King Road. There was another camera at Linda Lane, 451 Paradise Drive, Bishop, Stadium Way. There was not another camera, guys, on King Road. There's only one camera mentioned, and that is the 1112. They've got Indian Hills, Main Street, Ridge Road, Linda Lane, 1112, Linda Lane, 451 Paradise, Bishop, Pullman, Washington, Costco, Chef Store, Albertsons, E&S Services. This one's interesting. Approximately 1 minute and 30 seconds behind local time. Following intended for a summary of collected surveillance footage, but not intended to be all-encompassing report of the entirety of the video collected. Indian Hills, Ridge Road, 330 at King Road, southbound, turning east onto Queen Road. (1320) Dumpster, Linda Lane, that's passing Taylor. Ridge Road, Main Street. 1330-55 Linda Lane, parking. They parked at Linda Lane. King Road. I'll go back and look at the videos on this. This is pretty detailed. Paradise Road, King Road. We don't see this on the original footage, so they had to have edited out. I've played these videos slow, fast, half full. Yeah, something's not right here. I'll go back through those. How could this one vehicle be circling around and none of these movements match what they released to the public? Oh. What were they going to pull at trial? What were they going to show at trial? That's a pretty detailed FBI report, guys. And then he was 2024 responded to the area of 1630 Northeast Valley Road, Unit G201 in Pullman, which is the former residence. He wanted to recreate the drive time from there to Moscow. Stadium Way. That's the route he took, and it was 11 minutes and 13 seconds. Total distance, 17.7 miles. So it took 11 minutes and 13 seconds. He took another route, and it took 11 minutes and 6 seconds, 7.5 miles. This guy was interviewed at his home, Kenneth Bonfin, Paradise. I'm going to mark this. So this guy is at 651 Paradise Drive. He was interviewed. Since the video was last collected from his residence, he installed new video surveillance cameras at his residence. Bonfin knew that his previous cameras, from which previous video surveillance was collected, were motion activated. He recalled that his surveillance cameras were set up to capture motion activation when people walked in front of his residence. Due to this, he provided his previous cameras did not activate when vehicles would travel on West Ridge Road and turn north at the intersection in front of his residence. Additionally, he also had a camper parked in front of his, I remember seeing this one, in front of his residence, which he said he kept vehicles driving this direction from triggering his cameras. He also advised that due to the sensitivity setting on the motion activation of his cameras, they would oftentimes not trigger when vehicles would travel on South on Ridge Road down the hill. Therefore, they would turn eastbound before they turned eastbound. Yada, yada, yada. His cameras did not capture it. He was able to log the surveillance in for 1330. The property manager, Kane Pranich, had previously provided the login. There was only footage available back to November 19th. It only kept it for 30 days. Well, how did people get it? There is no surveillance footage. How did people get it and release it? Why did he wait so long to log in 24? What? I can't believe they released that publicly. Those are just notes. That's wild. All right, let's see what the next one is. This is Gilbertson's resume, his work history, defendant's motion to adopt voir dire procedures. The magic question, we all know that that's the jury. I think this is pretty standard. Why did they unredact this? What did they unredact? I'll have to go back and look at this one and see what they unredacted. That's interesting. And the last one, thank God we got to the end. All right. Oh, there you go. All right. So this is the last one in here. State's jury questionnaire proposals. Okay. So these are just documents that what they were proposing on the jury questionnaire, and that was the state, and that was in March of 25. In addition to the above suggestions for inclusion, oh my God, Bill Thompson, consider adding Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk to the list of victims appearing under item 54, page 14, since they are victims of the burglary charge. What was under 54? Well, they didn't give us that. I'll have to go back to the jury questionnaire and see what 54 is. Hold on. What was 54? Jury questions. 54. Consider adding them. Do you know any of the victims? Add Bethany and Dylan into here. If you answered yes to any of these, please identify who the person is and how you know them. So they wanted them to be added to this area right here. Yep, folks, that was all 20 of them covered in the last, I've been on for 2 hours already. Damn. All right. So now you know about it. It's 4 a.m. where I am. Oh, you better get some rest. Whew. All right. So what was the most interesting thing that you saw on the new unredacted release documents that we've been waiting since December 18th for? What was, and if you guys don't know, here is where all these documents are located. I'm always about transparency and education. You can go get them yourself. I will highlight it right here so that you can educate yourself and learn about anything. Research. Obviously, you need to research, fact check, double check, do your own homework. It is very important for you to understand the criminal process. Those were all 20 plus documents that were just unsealed. What was the most interesting one that we reviewed? I know that I'm going to go back and look at some of the other ones, but I would definitely agree to this one. This is probably the most insightful one that we have been able to look at. Because remember, some of these names were redacted. Jack DeCour was redacted and Bethany Funk was redacted before. So it's really interesting to learn who possibly was involved, still missing the camera time. Yeah. Oh yeah, I would agree. The missing audio, they handed over the file just like they did to Jules and it's missing audio. They handed it to Ann Taylor. Where did the audio go? Is that the audio that JD's questioning? No, that audio was at 2:26. And that's something that I've been going back and listening to. That is wild. So over at Jules True Crime Reactions, she has the audio from 2:26. You can hear the phone ring. And then obviously you can just go ahead and listen to those. So that's pretty interesting. This has been very interesting. Totally. So I'm glad that we reviewed all these. I'm glad that we've uncovered a few things. I'll go ahead and give a highlight. I'll put the time markers in here so everyone can take a peek at them at their leisure. And I thank you for joining me on a whim to bring you these unredacted and what actually was going on at the time. And I can't believe that Kohberger's assessor, the doctor, had passed away during all this. And don't know how, don't know why. It was shocking, obviously. It was untimely. That's a lot of work to have to go back. That's a lot of work, guys. When you're diagnosing somebody and the time and the reports and the history, and I mean, that's a lot of work for one person to do. It's crazy. I really don't know why. It says they weren't delayed. They were ready to go to trial, but obviously I showed you today that they were still looking for a continuance, especially in the death penalty. Wow. Thank you all for joining me tonight. It has been my pleasure to be here with you and looking through these documents. I hope and pray that you all get a good night's rest. I'm going to be back on tomorrow for a 6-hour May highlight live every hour on the hour, a new topic that was covered in May, any of the highlights. I've got some video footage of something that's happening this weekend that a lot of people are interested in. So thank you humbly. And also thank you to my mods. Thank you. I appreciate everybody that joined the live tonight. Y'all get a good night's rest and be well. We'll see you tomorrow. You know the drill.